Hello and welcome to lesson 14 in making a new series Dalek in Blender. And hopefully by this point you've been following along, you have finished the model, and now we need to give it a bit of color. So we're going to be doing this all procedurally, and then in a following video we're going to UV unwrap it and bake the textures so we can use them in external programs like Element 3D or Unreal or other 3D graphics software that you might have. But for now we're going to create the textures procedurally. So I'll talk you through it. It can be a bit of a complex procedure, but I'll try and make it nice and simple because it's not my strong point. And the easier it is for me, then hopefully the easier it'll be for you. So we need to think about what we need. So the Dalek is made up of a few different texture components. So we've got the base color, which covers most of the object. And in this case, I'm going to be trying to replicate that sort of post-2005 bronze look. But the way that we're setting this up, you can make it any color that you want, but I'm going to go with the default, and then I'll show you how to change it if you want, but it should be pretty straightforward. Then we need this black fender, and the screws can be black as well, and also these arm balls can be black. We need this sort of rubbery material, which we're going to use for the hemi-surrounds, the objects on the neck, and the plunger. We need a kind of base plain metal, which we can use for the appendages and the eye stalk, and then we need a sort of milky white plastic that we can use for the eye discs. We need a shiny black plastic that we can use for the eye, and we need a material for the iris as well, which can be an emission shader. So what we'll do, we'll start with the base color. Now if we go over from our layout to our shading workspace, it looks a little bit different. So it uses an HDRI built into Blender in order to light this scene. So at the moment it's set to its default, but you can change that by clicking this drop down here, clicking the picture, and say you wanted a more kind of studio setup, or a car park, for example. In fact, that might be quite good for it because it's quite neutral. Let's stick with that for now. So we're going to start by working on the base color. So I'm going to click the skirt. Now, we've already, due to how I made it earlier, got these materials named. If you haven't, what you need to do is go over to our material settings over here, and then add this plus button here. And in this case, I'm calling it Dalek Bronze. You can call it what you want, but we're calling it Dalek Bronze for now. And then you get this thing called the Principled BSDF shader. Now, all of Blender's textures are based on this Principled BSDF, and it works by plugging things into it, or you can use it directly in Blender. But the more stuff you plug in, the more control you get. So I've done a bit of Googling, done a bit of research, and I've worked out the base color that I need for this Dalek is hex code 8F6A3D. And I'll write that in the description. But if I just copy that and then click on this base color here, and in the hex value, we'll just paste that. And there we are. And it's already looking a bit Dalek-y, so it's kind of a bronzy tan color. Now, I've already assigned this material to the objects that I will need. Again, if you haven't, just click on it, and then from our drop-down, you can just press plus, and then find the material that you need in this list here. But we don't need to do that. So, if you wanted to, you could literally just leave it like that. It's basically like someone's painted the model. But let's make it a bit more interesting than that. So, we need to decide if we wanted to make it look like the Dalek we see on screen or the hypothetical real-world Dalek. So the Daleks in universe are made out of metal. I think they're made out of Dalekanium. But the BBC props are not. They're made out of fiberglass and plastic and wood. And I think we should try and replicate that as much as possible. So what we need to do is first enable an add-on called Node Wrangler. So this comes pre-installed with Blender. If you go into Edit, Preferences, and Add-ons, then just type in Node Wrangler, and then you should just have to tick that little box there. So what we're going to do in our shading workspace, let's just see, can I turn screencast keys on over here? No, I can't. Okay, ignore that. We are going to Shift-A, and then it's exactly like adding a mesh, except we're adding nodes. So if you type in search, and then type in noise. Now, a noise texture is the basis of probably about 95% of what we're going to be doing. It generates a random noise pattern in black and white, which we can then manipulate to give us different effects. So if we hover our mouse over the noise texture and then press Control and T, this adds texture coordinates in a mapping node. Now what we need to do is change the texture coordinates from generated to object. And this allows us to spread the noise texture evenly across the whole object. If you want to see what it looks like on the Dalek, because right now all you can see is our principal BSDF, you need to unplug this shader and plug this one in. Now the easy way of doing it is, again, if we click on our noise texture and then just press Control Shift and then click, and that's now showing our noise texture. So that's what we need Node Wrangler for. It just makes that a lot easier. Cool, so let's just box select and drag it out of the way. What I want to do, instead of using one simple base color, I want to use a noise texture to allow me to blend a few different noises together, or different colors together. So what we'll do is Shift-A, search for a color ramp. And now they spell color the American way, but C-O-L-O-R-R-A-M-P, color ramp. Now, the way that it's looking at the moment, we have this black handle, we have this white handle, and the more of the black we introduce, the darker it gets. If we drag the white towards it, it gets more contrasty. So let's just leave it like that for now. What I want to do first is increase this scale. So at the moment it's set to a very, very low number. If I change it to, say, 12, you get a lot more variation and size difference in these black spots. I also want to increase the detail to about 8 and the roughness to about 0.8. No, I don't. To 1. Maybe 0. Yeah, I was right, 0.8. If you set these things too high, they will look better, but Blender will struggle. But what we want is a nice, even pattern, not too big, not too small. In fact, let's turn that scale down to about 8. Now, I want one of the colors to be our base color, and I want another color to be slightly different. So let's click on our black handle, and then in this color box here, click that, and again, we're just going to paste that hex code in there. So now instead of black, it's our kind of bronze tan color. Now we need to change that white. So let's click on our white handle. And again, if we click on that white box, we're going to start by pasting in the same number. Now, obviously, it's just a flat color now. What we need to do is click on that box again and either drag it a little bit lighter or a little bit darker, depending on your preference. I'm going to make it just a tiny bit darker, just to break up that that color a little bit. Now, it's a little bit hard to see at the moment because it's completely flat. If we then plug our color back into the base color here, so click from this little dot here, click and drag into here, and then we're just going to Control-Shift-T the principal BSDF shader, and it's subtle, but there's a bit more color variation in there now. You can make it less subtle. For example, if you change that color to a lot lighter, you can see all these different patches, which actually looks pretty good, but I'm going to undo that and just leave it a little bit more subtle. Now, what I'm also going to do is copy this noise texture. So I'm going to Shift-D and just drag him up here. I'm going to plug the vector from our mapping into the vector of our noise texture. I'm going to Control, Shift, and click it, again, so we can see it. I want to increase the scale to about 15. Actually, no, I'm going to decrease it to about 7. And what I'm going to do here is create some kind of rusty pattern to overlay. So let's leave the detail and the roughness the same. And if we Shift-A, search, and this time we're going to search for a mix color. Now what this will allow us to do is mix a couple of different shaders together. So I'm going to just click and leave that there for a minute. I'm going to take the factor from the noise texture and plug it into the factor of the mix shader. And then I'm going to unplug our color ramp from base color of principal BSDF and plug it into this color B here. And in fact, no, sorry, color A. And then if I plug the mix shader into the base color and then Control-Shift, click that, and it takes a few seconds to update. Now we've got basically white being overlaid all over this Dalek. Now it's not quite what we want. So the first thing we need to do is Shift-A and search for another color ramp, plug that in between, we're going to increase the contrast because this is now acting like a mask. So the more black there is, the more of the original color gets through. The more white there is, the more masked off it'll be. So if we drag these handles fairly close together, make them quite contrasty, and then if we change it from linear to B-spline, it'll blend in between them quite a lot more. But again, this is way too much. So we're going to change the black handle. No, sorry, we're going to change the white handle by clicking on that. Click the color, and we're just going to make it a little bit darker. So now it's almost like there's a thin layer of dust over all of it. Which again, it looks cool, but it's not quite what we want. So we can change this color B here. Let's make it a little bit darker. And maybe make it a little bit more yellowy. And that looks good. So again, it's subtle. You can see it on the dome. But it's effectively like there's just a little bit of rusty dust all over it. And that just makes it feel a little bit more realistic. So that's all the work going into the color. So let's just box select these nodes and just drag them up. Now we want to introduce some variations into the roughness as well. So we're going to use the same mapping node. And again, we're going to use Shift A. We're going to add a noise. And then we are going to plug the vector from the mapping into the vector on the noise. And again, we're going to Shift A. We're going to add a color ramp. And we're going to plug the factor from that into the factor here. And then we're going to Control Shift and click that. Now, again, Blender uses black and white values to control the roughness. So the blacker something is, the shinier it is, the whiter it is, the duller it is. So if we, just for the sake of it, let's just really increase this contrast just so we can see what we're doing. So drag the handles closer together. Now we want to change the scale to a much higher number. Let's make it about 25. That should be okay. Maybe a little bit more. Let's do 35. And then again, we're going to increase the detail to about 5. That should be okay. And the roughness, we're going to make 0.8. Now, if I plug this into the roughness of our principal BSDF, and then Control-Shift-Click that, just wait again for it to update. Now, there are some really shiny bits and some really dull bits, but I think the shiny bits are too shiny, because you can see they catch the highlights here. So what we need to do is grab our black handle, click this black color, and just make it a little bit more gray. And that just helps it to behave a bit more realistically. So we still get the breakup of the texture and the roughness, but it's not like just some random metal bits juttering out. So that looks good. Again, you can see as it catches the light, it just reflects a little bit more. But we don't want that to be too much. Now, the last thing we need to do with the noise texture, so if we Shift A, search for another noise texture, and plug our vector into the vector, and again we're going to add a color ramp, and factor to factor, funk to funky, and then Control-Shift-Click, Control-Shift-Click that. Now, let's increase the contrast again by dragging these handles all close together. Now we want the scale to be enormous. What we're doing here is creating a bumpy, rough surface. So it's not like a flat, plain surface. There's little micro details, micro bumps in there that'll just help everything, again, feel a little bit more realistic, but you want to be subtle about it. So the scale, I'm going to change to 120. So you get all these little Dalmatian-y spots. We're going to increase the detail again to maybe about 7. And the roughness we're going to turn all the way up to 1. So you get this really, really dense black and white material. Now, if we just make some room, so just box select these nodes and just drag them away, we're going to Shift A and search for a bump node and drag that in between. Now, we don't want it plugged into the normal. We want it plugged into the height. So if we drag from our color to our height, wait for it to update, and now it's all gone very, very weird. Oh, let's unplug it from the normal as well. So yeah, it's gone this weird funky color that we do not want. And the reason we need to, or the thing we need to do to fix that, let's just drag these out of the way, is we're going to shift, no, we're not going to shift, we are going to drag this node here. So click its little output and plug it into the normal of our principal BSDF. And then if we Control Shift click on the principal BSDF, wait for it to update. And now if we zoom in, you can see we've got all these little dots and pock marks on the surface. You can't see when you're zoomed out. But if you were to get closer, it just gives a lot of surface variation. And again, it just adds to the realism. Now, what we also want to do is just give it a little bit of shininess. So I don't want to increase the metallic. I don't want to increase the roughness. What I want to do on our principal BSDF, I've got this clear coat drop down here. So this is effectively like it's going to be varnished. So if we change the weight of this to 1, and now you can see it's catching these little reflections as we tab around. But then let's just change the roughness to about 0.3, 0.3. So not too little, not too much. And again, if you scroll around, you see it catches the specular highlights. And it's a subtle effect, but I think it looks really cool. Let's just change our HDRI so you can see how it looks in different conditions. So let's just drop that down, change it back to there. There you go. You get a bit more reflection for this one. And I think that looks really cool. So that's the base color done. That's also the most complex material done. So we can use it to kind of form the basis of the others. So I think the next thing we should do is this Dalek gold. So we're going to use that for the slats and for the hemispheres. So if we click on the hemispheres, I've already got it set up with Dalek gold. If you haven't, you just select the object, and then in its material settings, you can just add that on there. And again, for these, now the slats are a little bit different due to how we built them. So we've got a bolt hole cover material and a Dalek gold material. If you need to change that, tab into edit mode, just double tap A to deselect everything. If you haven't got these materials set up, what you want to do is hover your cursor over the bolt hole covers, press L, and it selects all those linked materials, and L, 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 just keep doing that. And hopefully, if Blender's behaving itself, you can also go to select similar area. No. Select similar polygon sides. No. Select similar perimeter. Yeah. No, not quite. So you might just have to go around and just hovering L over all of them. So I won't do that. But then you just press H to hide it. And then you can select all the others, press plus to add a material, and then just add Dalek gold. Hopefully that made sense. But hopefully you've been following it the way I've been doing it, so you shouldn't have to do that. So make sure you've got Dalek gold selected. Now again, I've been doing some research on the colors that we need, and if you want to copy this, it's C9A23A. So let's just paste that into the base color. And it's okay. It's all right. But we need to change that quite a bit. So I'm going to drag this metallic slider up to 1, which instantly makes it look more like gold. And then I'm just going to increase the roughness a little bit to about 0.6. Because you don't want it to be too shiny, then it will just look weird. And we're going to do something very, very similar for this material that we're going to do for the previous one. So we've already got the clear coat set up for some reason. I don't remember why. Yeah, I might have just been experimenting, but let's just turn the clear coat all the way up to 1, and the roughness make it about 0.4. And again, we want to Shift A, add a noise texture, and then select the noise texture and press Ctrl T, and change the texture coordinates from generated to object. So drag object into vector, and let's just Control Shift click our noise. And then if we change the scale up to around 25, maybe a little bit more, 35. Again, we want these variations in color. Just drag that out of the way. We're going to Shift A, search for a color ramp, and drag that in between. We're going to increase the contrast a little bit. just like that. And then we're going to plug from the color into the roughness. And then let's just Control-Shift-Click that. And actually, that's way too much. So let's just change the scale to... Well, in fact, let's change the detail to 5. And the roughness to 1. And then let's change the scale to 65. And that's okay. But there's too much contrast, I think. So let's change this from linear to B-spline. That's good. And then we don't want it to be pure black, because I say black, pure black in Blender is perfectly shiny. So we're going to click this color here and just raise it up a little bit to a very light gray. And then we're going to take this white here and just drag it down. So nothing is completely rough and nothing is completely shiny. So that looks good on the hemispheres, and it also looks good on the slats. Yep, that's nice. And then again, we want to add some bump to it. So we'll do exactly the same. We're going to grab our noise texture, Shift-D to duplicate it, plug vector into vector. We're going to add a color ramp. So Shift-A, color ramp, factor to factor, funk to funky. And then let's just Control-Shift-Click on our color ramp. Let's increase the scale to about 100. And that should be okay. Let's increase this contrast here to around here. This is very much a trial and error thing, but that looks good. And then we're going to Shift-A, search for a bump node, plug that in there. So we want color to height, and then we're going to plug the normal into the normal. And then let's just Control-Shift-Click on the Principled BSDF. Wait for it to update. And there we go. So again, if you zoom in, you can see it's not a completely smooth surface. It's got these little divots and bumps in it. It's got the shininess from the clear coat. If you zoom out, it's a lot more subtle. And if you zoom right in, you get a lot more detail. In fact, that might be a bit too much bump. So let's turn the strength down to 0.6. 0.4. Yeah, that's better, 0.4. Yeah, that looks good. Cool, okie dokes. That's the Dalek Gold done. Now we want to do the fender. So with the fender, let's click on it. I'm going to create a new material. I'm going to call it Dalek Black Metal, which would be an incredible genre of music. And again, we're going to use a similar principle that we used for the main Dalek metal. So we're going to click our Dalek bronze. So click the skirt. We're going to box select around all of these nodes. And then let's just right click and copy. And then let's go into our fender, right click and paste. Now we need to reconnect these nodes. So let's do it from the bottom up. Let's plug the normal into the normal. Let's plug the roughness to the roughness. At the moment, you can't really see all that much because there's no base color, but it's updating. There we go. And then we want to plug the color ramp base color into the base color. And again, give it a second to update. Now, obviously the colors are wrong because it's the same color as the main body. So we need to change these colors here. So for the black, for our main black, I've got 1A, 1A, 1A. So if we click this handle here, click its color and just paste that in there. That looks good. And then we'll do the same for this other one here. So 1A, 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 press enter. And then let's just make it a little bit lighter. That's good. And again, it's already got the dust on it from last time, but let's just change that up a little bit. Let's just change the scale to about 3. And let's maybe just increase this contrast a little bit. Change the color. This should be okay. But I also want to turn the metallic up as well. So if we wait for that to update, you see it gives it a bit of a different look. It just makes it look a little bit more metallic-y. And now we've done that, I'm going to change the roughness as well. So I'm just going to drag this handle a little bit further to the left. And that looks nice. And then what I want to do is click these screws. And then we're going to change that to Dalek black metal. And then we're going to grab these appendage balls and just change those to Dalek black metal. Dalek black metal. There we go. And I think that's all we need to do for that. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is create the material for the hemisphere surrounds, the neck objects, and the plunger arm here. So let's grab our hemi surrounds. We're going to create a new material, and we're going to call it Dalek rubber. And then while we're here, let's click our plunger, change that to Dalek rubber from this little drop-down list here. Dalek rubber. And now with the neck, actually, we need to be quite careful. So if we select the horizontal rings, we'll change that to Dalek rubber. And let's just hide them for the minute. And then for these vertical rods, we're going to go Dalek rubber and then hide that by pressing H. Now, this is the object that we put this mesh on. Now, we don't want to do anything with that because that'll interfere with the texture that's on there at the moment. So let's just press H to hide that one. And then we've got this base mesh behind. So again, we're going to change this to Dalek rubber. Cool. And then Alt-H to unhide everything. And let's just click our plunger so we can see what we're doing. Now, this is a pretty simple material. So in its base color, you want 0F, 0F, 0F. So if I paste that in there, there you go. And now we need to put it on these rings as well. Dalek rubber. Now we need to bring its roughness almost right up. So we're going to bring that to about 0.895 because rubber is not a reflective material. And now what we also want to do is just create a little bump going on inside. So if we, again, Shift A, search for a noise texture, we're going to Control T and bring up our texture coordinates. So plug object to object, object to vector. And then let's just drag that out the way. We're going to add another color ramp. Drag the factor to the factor. Move that out of the way. We're going to Shift A. We're going to add a bump node. Plug the color into the height. And let's just plug the normal directly into the normal. And for now, actually, let's just Control-Shift-Click this color ramp here. Now, the scale, we're going to make about 120. Not 12, 120. And then let's just bring up the contrast. We're going to bring up the detail to 10. And we're going to bring up the roughness to 1. That's good. And then let's just Control-Shift-Click on our Principled BSDF. And again, it's a very subtle effect. You can't really see it, but there's just a little bit of surface variation going on. So if you do any weird little close-ups, it'll just make it look a little bit more lifelike. And that's looking really nice. Cool. So we're nearly at the home stretch. The next thing we're going to do... Now, is this metal too black? I'm just going to change the base color of this metal a little bit. Just make it a bit brighter. Just a touch. You don't have to. This is just my choice here. Yeah, I think it looks better like that. Just a bit more subtle. Actually, let's change the color of this rust a little bit. Is that actually doing anything? I can't tell. Well, let's leave it in. It's fine. I like it there. Right, next thing we're going to do is create the main metal for the appendages, the gun, the eye stalk, and actually these little bolt hole covers. So let's click our slats. Oh, I've already got a thing called bolt hole cover. Let's click this bolt hole cover. I'm just going to rename it to Dalek main metal. And its base color, we want to make quite a generic kind of metally color. So I've got BFC 3C7. So again, let's just copy that and paste that there. And then let's just select all the objects we need to have it. So our arm stages, Dalek metal, this one, Dalek main metal, sorry. I don't know what this Dalek metal is. Dalek main metal. Dalek main metal. Let's click our gun objects. Dalek main metal. Dalek main metal. This one here. Dalek main metal. And the Dalek main metal. And then let's just grab the eye stalk. Make that Dalek main metal. Oh, we need to make the pivot Dalek black metal. There. Cool. So let's click our main metal material. Let's just drag the sort of viewport so where we can see it. Now, at the moment, it doesn't look like anything. So let's drag this metallic up to 1. So that makes it look a little bit better. And again, we're going to use a noise texture. So we're going to Shift-A, search for a noise. We're going to Control-T that. Object into vector. Just Control-click our noise texture so we can see it. We're going to add a color ramp and just increase the contrast. Like so. And then let's change its scale to about 25. A bit more, 35. Okay. And then detail, we're going to change that to 5 and roughness to about 0.75. Cool. And then we're going to take this color ramp and we're going to plug it into the roughness. And then let's just Control-Shift-click our Principal BSDF shader. Now, that's a bit too reflective. So again, we're going to change it from linear to B-spline. And then let's just drag this handle a little bit more. And we're going to change it from black to a dark gray. So about there. And even then, that might be a bit much. Let's drag that down a little bit. Actually, no, that's quite good. Look at the eye stalk. So we just want a little bit of variation. Yeah, that should be fine. Oh, we also need to put it onto our ear cages. Now, again, the way we model this is unhelpful. So if we tab into this, oh, because it's still mirrored, what we want to do is double tap A to deselect everything. We're going to hover our cursor over the bits we want. So here, 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 and here, while pressing L to select it. So I'll show you that again. Double tap A, hover the cursor over the ear cage, press L, press L, press L, press L, press L. Let's get around the back and press L. And then we're going to press this plus icon here in our material editor and just find Dalek main metal from the drop down and press assign. There we go. Cool. And then we just need the bump as well. So I'm going to use the same noise texture and color ramp. Actually, I'm going to change the color ramp. So grab our color ramp, Shift D, duplicate it, drag factor to factor. We're going to Shift A and add a bump node. Put the color into the height and the normal to the normal. Wait for it to update. And if we're just going to make this handle here a little bit darker. That should be okay. There we are. And let's look everywhere else. That looks good. Yep, that looks good. Cool, we are very, very nearly done. So now we want to do these eye discs. And the eye discs we're going to cheat with a little bit. So if I grab, I can't grab because my internet's not working. I was going to grab a picture of the eye discs to show people, but they're kind of a milky white plastic. So if we just change new and just call it Dalek white plastic, and then we're going to change its color to kind of a weird, almost yellow white. So I'm going to use E7E49BFF. And oh, you could probably join these objects, but I'm not going to for now. So Dalek white plastic. Cool. And then let's just, we'll leave the roughness as is for the moment. We're going to give it a clear coat. So increase the weight and leave the roughness really, really low down. Maybe change it a little bit higher. And again, we're just going to give it a little bit of roughness variation and bump. So like everything, we're going to Shift A, search, noise texture, Control T, change its coordinates to object. Let's Control-Shift-Click on the noise texture. We're going to add a color ramp. Increase the contrast. Increase the scale to about, I don't know, 40. Increase the detail to 5. Increase the roughness to about 0.75. And then we're going to plug the roughness, also the color into the roughness. And let's just Control-Shift-Click on our Principled BSDF. Maybe let's just increase that a little bit. No, that should be okay. Again, you can do this by eye. But actually that looks quite good. Maybe let's just change the color a little bit whiter. That's good. Lovely. So the only two things we have left, we've got this eye and the glass for the ears. Now, the glass from the for the ears, I'm going to do in a separate tutorial, and I'll show you for why. I'll show you for why in the separate tutorial. It's basically because I want to use a texture to drive the bump node. So it's going to involve UV unwrapping, and because we're going to do UV unwrapping in the next texture, I might as well just show you that. In the next video, I'll just show you then. Also, what we need to do is add a color to these cowl screws. So I'm going to pick Dalek main metal. There. Okay. Now let's pick our eye. We're going to call this Dalek shiny plastic. Dalek shiny plastic holding hands. And we're going to grab this color I've got here, which is 050505. Type that or paste that into the base color. That's not bad. We're going to leave the roughness. In fact, let's just drop the roughness down a little bit to about 0.4 just for now. Actually, that was pointless because I'm going to control it with a noise texture. So we're going to Shift-A, Mesh, Noise Texture. And then we're going to Control-Shift-Click on it. And then we're going to Control-T on it as well. Change Generated to Object. Let's change the scale to about 50. And detail to 5. Roughness to 1. No. Roughness to 0.65. Let's just drag and move him all around. Boop. Shift-A, and we're going to add a color ramp. So you should be used to this by now. So let's just increase the contrast a little bit. We're going to change this black handle here to be something slightly lighter. Like so. And then let's just plug that into the roughness. And Control-Shift-Click our Principled BSDF. That's good. Oh, we need to change the from linear, the interpolation to B-spline. That's good. Lovely. And then let's just Shift-D our noise texture. Vector to vector. Change the scale to something big like 120. We're going to Shift-A, add another color ramp. Plug our factor into the factor. Funk to funky. Didn't work that time. Shift-A, add a bump. Plug the color into the height. Normal to normal. Let that update. And that's a bit too much. Let's just drop the strength down to about 0.3. That's good. That looks nice. Now, the last thing I want to do is have this eye globe, the lens light up. So if we tab into edit mode, just double tap A to deselect everything. We're going to go 1 for vertex mode. Select this front vertex here. And then we're going to press Control and then plus on the numpad. And just keep selecting these rings until you've selected, oh, that was one too many, every one that make up the lens. Press 3 for face mode. In our material mode, just press New. And we're going to call this Eye Glow. Now we're going to delete, we're going to assign that. And you can see it's white, so it's a different color. We're going to delete our Principled BSDF shader. And then we're going to Shift-A, search for an emission shader. And then we're going to plug the emission into the surface. And we're going to change its color to quite a royal blue. let's just increase the strength to about 3. Oop. Now, it doesn't really look like anything, except we've got a blue circle in the middle of our Dalek. But trust me, that'll look good. So let's go back into our layout. And then if we change it to, in fact, I'll show you how to bring an HDRI in. So let's go to our world settings, and then surface should be background. In fact, I'll show you an easy way of doing it. So shading, let's change this from where it says object to world. Let's delete because I've already got one set up. So delete any nodes you might have in there. We're going to Shift A, search for a background, and drag the background to surface of the world output. And then we need to add an HDRI. So if we Shift A, search for an image texture, and plug the color into the color, and then we're going to open. Now, I get my HDRIs from a website called polyhaven.com. It's absolutely fantastic. So I suggest you do the same. At the moment, I'm either using Small Hanger or Palomero Park. Let's just use Small Hanger for the moment. Now, if I go back to layout and go to our rendered view, it's weirdly dark. Let's just have a look at my color management. Hold on. Oh, it's because I've got my exposure really low. Why the hell have I done that? Change that to oh, my gamma's all weird as well. What am I doing? Standard. Ooh. Medium contrast. View transform. Filmic, sorry, medium contrast. Change that to 1. What is going on there? That's gone weird. I don't know why it's doing this. Huh. Right, never mind that. Let's go to viewport shading and material preview. Yeah. I'll come back to that later. Now, we want this light to glow. So how do we do that? Well, Blender used to have a feature in Eevee called Bloom, but they got rid of it. So if we go over to our compositor, so our compositing workspace, and let's just drag this window up here. We're going to change it from dope sheet by clicking this box here to 3D viewport. Let's just drag into a position we want. And then I think we might actually have to use rendered view. So let's just switch to rendered view, which looks very strange for the minute. Okay, and then in our compositing window, we're going to click Use Nodes. And then down here, next to our viewport shading, we're going to click this arrow. And it says Compositor down here. So we're going to change it from disabled to always. Now, nothing's changed at the moment, but we need to add some nodes in here. So we're going to go Shift A, search for a glare node. And we're going to plug that in between the image and the output. Now, that's not what we want at all. We want to change it from streaks to bloom. Now, that's probably a bit too much bloom. So if we drop this highlight here, and we're going to change the threshold to be about 1.3, and then let's just reduce the strength of this glow a little bit. So without compositing, with compositing, and it just makes it look a lot nicer. We're going to do a very, very similar thing when we do the ear lights. But for now, I think I've been waffling on for a good half hour, 45 minutes or so. So, yeah, I need to work out why my rendered mode is doing this, because these are not the true colors. Yeah, something's gone a bit peculiar. Let's go back to layout. Yeah, I don't know why. But hopefully this tutorial has been really, really useful. If you do want to change the colors of your Dalek, let's just change that back to object. All you have to do is just play around with the colors you plugged into the color amps. So, for example, if you wanted this to be a black or a red Dalek, just make it red there and make it red There. And then we'll need to change the color of this dust. There you go, red Dalek. Simple. Oh, you're bored of red Dalek? Make it a pink Dalek. There you go. So the beauty of it all being procedural is you can change it on the fly, and you can keep doing that until you bake it. And if you want to change it again, you just rebake it. But let's worry about that another time. Let's just Control Z. There we go. So now he's back to how he should be. And let's just change our HDRI to this car park again. Now, in between videos, I might play around with the colors a little bit, because you can literally make this however you want it to look. But for now, I'm going to leave him like this. And hopefully by the time we go on to the next video, my color management will be sorted, and we're going to focus on a little bit more texturing, and then we're going to unwrap the Dalek and bake it. But yeah, hopefully this has been useful for you. It just looks awful, doesn't it? Hopefully this has been useful for you. I'll find out what's going on, and I'll get back to you very, very shortly. But please do like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you very, very soon. Bye, 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 bye.